When I am diagnosing a problem, what I do is I drag the roll-up bar under the first feature, and I examine each sketch and each feature as I go down the history tree and looking for any errors. And so far so good. Everything looks exactly as I demonstrated in my previous video, until I get down to this revolve cut, or cut revolve number 1. And if I edit this sketch and I'll go around to the front view, and I see that there is a line missing from here up to here. Later this will be used to cut a thread. Now I need to make some changes to this to make it proper, and in the video I drew this line from here to the midpoint of a line that was in between here and here, and so I had a line from here to here, and I'll drag this point over to snap to there, or I'll trim it off. Let me just go ahead and do trim on that, and so now I have an enclosed profile in that area. And then second problem is, in the video I explicitly stated to avoid putting this circle at the midpoint of this line because the dimension location was pretty close to that midpoint, and I was concerned that that might accidentally snap to that midpoint, and so I specifically pointed that out in the video, not to put it on that midpoint. So I'm going to delete this relation, that coincident relation, and actually let me undo that for a minute, and hopefully I can undo that step. If I double click on this dimension, it tells me that that is a driven dimension, not a driving dimension. I can't change that. Now normally your driven dimensions are in a different color, but I've gray colors, but I've turned mine to black, and that's why it doesn't appear to be obviously a driven dimension because of the color. But so I'm going to delete this coincident to the midpoint, so I'll delete that. And so now if I move this, I can move this over, and I'm going to delete this dimension and put it in again, and actually maybe it will allow me to change it. So let's just see if it will allow me to change it now. I'm not familiar with SolidWorks on how to convert a driven dimension to a driving dimension. I assume that there's a way over here someplace. So I'm just going to delete that, and I'll put in that dimension again. So I want a dimension to the center line, not to the object line, to the center line, over to the midpoint or the center point of that circle, and I'll get over onto this size, and I'll put in the 8.03 or whatever the dimension should be. And so so here was the midpoint of this line. Here is the location of that dimension, so you can see that that's very close to the midpoint of that line. Now maybe it's supposed to be at the midpoint, in which case put it there. So I'm going to select these two lines, and I'll do coincident to the line, not to the midpoint of the line. And so again, maybe we can find this. So there's that the circle center, and here's the midpoint of that line. And remember, we're zoomed way in. This distance is actually tiny. Maybe we could even dimension that distance. So let's see if we can dimension that distance from here to here. And so it's 0.06. So small difference there. So that was one problem with that circle. And then the second problem I made in my video, but I added to the video to point out the issue that I did, in that if I check this in a section view, so I'll go to a section view and I'll accept that, I see that this material is actually added, that circle is added to it rather than subtracted from that. So what we would need to do when doing this revolve, I'll edit that feature, and here where it says selected contours, we'll also need to select this contour so that it will cut that away, and we'll see that. And so now it's cut away rather than added to that. Another way we might have done that is to edit the sketch and trim off the top of that circle, and then we can try trimming this, but we might become under constrained if we do that. But I'm going to try trimming that. It didn't become under constrained, it stayed black, and so that would give us the profile. Now if it did become under constraint, I'd either add the constraints that I need, or I would change that to the circle to construction and then put an arc from here to here. In any case, one way or another, we need to get that so that this is cut rather than adding that torus for the O-ring at that feature. And let's go on down. So I'm going to leave section view here, and I'll go down to the next cut revolve, and that was this hole over here on this end. And if I expand this feature, I see that there's a minus in parentheses. That indicates that that sketch is not fully defined. So I'm going to edit that sketch, and I got the wrong tool. I tried to edit sketch plane, so I'm going to edit the sketch. And if I go to the top view on this, we see that this line, the angle of this line, is not constrained. And when I drew this originally, I watched it put a parallel on here, so I knew that I didn't have to do that. It did it for me. But I'll select this line, and I'll select this line if I can get it here. I'm having trouble getting it. It's getting that dimension instead. I might have to move that dimension out of the way, and then I'll get this line and hold the control key. I'll get that line, and I'm going to make those two parallel, and I'll say OK to that. Now it turns black. It's all fully defined. And again, I did this at the standard 59-degree angle, but then this distance right here is only the thickness of 2 sheets of paper. I have to question, whether that is really necessary or not. When we do this, we'll go ahead and accept that, and I'm going to hide one of the parts. I'll hide that part, and maybe I'll hide this yellow part as well. That's hard to see. Okay, there we go. So this distance right here is 0.2. When we do that and we zoom in on the computer screen, we can see that really well. But keep in mind, this entire thing from here to here is only 16 millimeters, and then this is only 0.2 millimeters. So in the real world, this thing is about that size. That geometry is really, really tiny. Can we actually manufacture that? Is it really necessary for the way the fluid flows through this object? You'll have to do some consideration of that. And then we'll go down and the mirror, and then the cut sweep. And if I expand this, again, I see that the sketch is not fully constrained because it has a minus symbol in front of it. And if I edit that sketch, and we'll go around to the top view, we see that there's a blue dot here that indicates that sketch is not fully defined. I fully define all of my sketches. I find more problems from beginners because they didn't fully define something, and later on they get some unexpected result, or they don't even see the unexpected result. And so this was actually on a line from a previous sketch, or we could just make it horizontal from the origin over to this point. I'll add that horizontal relation, and now that's fully defined. And then over here on this, if I drag this point, and I showed this in the video, this point is underdefined, and so I'm assuming straight up from here. So I'll select that point, I'll select this point, I'll add that vertical relation, and now that turns black, and that's fully defined. So I would strive to fully define each and every sketch. No blue dots, no blue lines, no minus signs in parentheses. Make sure that everything is fully defined in your geometry, and you're less likely to run into issues at some future date.